All right. Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday, April 13th. This is Jim Benton with Chorus, and I am here today with a very special guest. I am with Greg Holmes. Greg, you are just jumping in our chat. Good morning. So Greg, Chief Sales Officer of Zoom, one of our board members, just a great all-around guy, great leader in sales. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey, Jim. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. Really appreciate you doing these daily updates, great insights and analysis to kind of keep people updated. It's been awesome.
I appreciate that. Hey, before we jump into the data, how is you're on the peninsula with me here in the Bay Area. How are you and your family holding up, just given what's going on?
Yeah, we're doing well. You know, I saw this clip on the weekend. There was a kind of a sports prospect out of the Bay Area, had gone to UCLA to play football, and he's getting ready for the draft, and all this stuff is impact. And they're asking him, you know, how's he doing about it? And he said, you know what, I'm too blessed to be stressed. He's like, I'm, you know, to just be in this position, and so many other people are so much more impacted than, you know, obviously being stuck in your home for several weeks. But I'm trying to go with that motto, too blessed to be stressed, because there's a lot of other people that are really having impact right now. And just anytime I start to complain, I try to think about that and go back to that motto. So I'm sticking with that one.
I love it. I've always done morning routines, and one of the first questions is just gratitude. What are you grateful for? And I even did it this morning. It's very easy to be grateful for so much right now. So I'm with you on that. One more question for you. As I've got 3 kids at home that are young and learning technology. Greg, you started your career as a teacher. You've been on the front line, such an awesome field. What are your thoughts about teachers today and having to embrace virtual meetings and getting such young kids into this? I mean, what goes through your mind thinking about that?
Yeah, it's a challenge. First of all, your question about just home with kids, like thinking about trying to run a classroom virtually over things like Zoom, and you've got your own kids, likely you got to kind of make sure they're on task before you can focus on your classroom. And a lot of that is focus, like any other job. And I think just the challenge of being at home and trying to do that virtually. But it's great. A lot of teachers too, frankly, hadn't done a lot of practicing on doing distance learning. This is something brand new. So the work and effort that it's taking for them to really try to translate what they do in a normal classroom to their kids, it's a big hill to climb, but it's fun to see it starting to take. The last couple of weeks, I've seen more and more actual live classes. At first, they're sending a lot of work just home to kind of do on their own, but the kids need that interaction. Even just bring them into a meeting, letting them see their classmates, hear their teacher's voice. Just that routine and rhythm, I think is helping these kids tremendously have a little bit more peace in a pretty chaotic time. So hats off to all of them that are kind of out there on their own front lines, keeping our kids educated. And it's challenging, but they're getting the job done, which is great.
I agree. I think hats off. They're doing remarkable. The patience I've seen from the teachers with kids doing all sorts of fun stuff they do when they're online, and 4.5-year-olds having to learn how to use mouse pads for the first time. The teachers have been fantastic. So I agree. Hats off to everybody that's just trying new approaches and keeping the kids engaged.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's one of those times where you hope you can come through this in some ways better than you came into it. And I think in that case, teachers are going to be more equipped in being flexible and doing different things, and kids are now going to learn new things. So again, something to kind of keep your mind on, try to come out of this better than you came into it in one way or another.
I love it. I love that you're kicking off Monday with us. Awesome.
Got my spring background. We're ready to go.
You're ready to go. So today, what we're going to talk about, Greg, is that the meeting volume. We'll look at where we saw the most updated week-over-week data. We're seeing a dip specifically on the AE side, so we'll break out AEs versus customer success and see what we have on that front as well. So this is the most updated data from our research team. We're looking at one of the key trends we've been looking at is just overall sales productivity. How is sales getting through COVID-19? How are we engaging with our clients and prospects out there? And last week we showed that there was an 11% drop from baseline. And so we saw it hold steady for April 6th, but last year at this time we were up. So we're off to a bit of a slower start in Q1. I'm curious, is this normal? Is this just how it goes from what you've seen? And what are your thoughts for, sales leaders out there who are seeing Q2 getting off to a bit of a slower start here?
Yeah, I mean, I think in some ways not surprising, but I think of things. You've got your AEs, your agents, all your team members now working virtually. So no, not necessarily having as much of an eye on activity and things they're doing on a day-to-day basis to generate these meetings. So I think that's one thing I'd look to. How's the activity? Are they still holding strong on the same amount of activity, or maybe might need to tick that up a little bit? And it's also what's the sentiment on the calls? Like, this is a tough time for everyone, and it's, I'm sure, easy to go into a call kind of bummed out, frustrated about what's happening around you, stressed out, and are you bringing those into your calls? The other thing is conversion of these meetings. If you're doing less, what can we do to convert more of those into, fruitful meetings and opportunities? So I'd want to look at that, and what can we fine tune? If we're going to do less, then we've got to convert more. If that's the nature of just what's happening, then I'd think about that as well, and things we could do to fine tune those conversations and what we're doing before the calls to be ready to make the meeting as, fruitful as possible.
Yeah, I think we've talked a lot about empathy in these meetings, about just the different kind of approaches out there. As we break the data down, Greg, this is what we're seeing across the two different segments. So although we held flat week over week, AEs are down 17% in terms of the meetings that they're having versus the CS team. And this is our first week of actually breaking this data out separately. So CS is actually holding steady. And when you look at the trends over a much longer period, CS is really in it right now. I mean, they're driving the volume, maintaining strength. AEs are being more negatively impacted, especially if you go further back in the data. You are really starting to see that dip and a softness in their activity. What do you think this says about the CS side and what companies are doing from a customer success standpoint?
Yeah, I think, no greater time to be as close to the customer as possible, understand how they're doing, what they're going through, challenges that have been brought upon them through this time. And, I would think that's likely the case, is just keeping that strong and steady and be as close as possible to keep engaged with customers. That's maybe a mindset that the AEs might want to take on a little bit more, right? To help them keep, and maybe that's with the empathy you mentioned, just, maybe move the sales hat to the side, add a little CS hat to your AE mindset, just to stay close to your customers and, just checking in, make sure they're doing all right, new challenges that are come upon them, and maybe new things you can start thinking about on how you could serve them better. So, but I would think likely on the CS side, that's probably what's happening there. Just, it's a great time to make sure you're really engaged and staying very close to the heartbeat of the customer right now.
I like those thoughts. So on the sales side, if you're leading a group right now, what I'm hearing from you is just, changing the playbook a bit, thinking about how to increase productivity that maybe is different than the standard, plays that we've had. You mentioned just checking in, doing anything to sort of engage the customers. Anything else to share on that, or any other thoughts that you've done in your past or playbooks you can tap into?
Let me think about that one. That's a good question. Yeah, I don't know, we've done creative things. Frankly, like right now, people are busy, they're scrambled a little bit. I've done, even in the past, my team has done what we called assumptive meetings. Some people may not love them, but essentially just send out a calendar invite without them saying that, maybe you couldn't get a hold of them, they didn't agree necessarily to the meeting. But especially if you've got a good relationship, we just send out that calendar invite with your link to meet. And a lot of times people just jump on. They're busy. They get it on their calendar. In some ways, they're thankful for it, that they didn't have to do the back and forth of figuring it out. So we've done, just be creative like that, trying to get time with them, especially right now. So that's one thing that stands out, just as one thought that I had that we've done that's worked in the past to get those engagements and keep those up.
I love it. I think that that's the magic, is coming up with just different plays that help people to bring their best and do their best. The assumptive part is helpful. So if you're bringing value to people, they can, and they're saying thank you, then it's a win.
That's the key. You've got to have, make sure you've got something great to share or discuss or bring to the table. Obviously don't do a assumptive meeting and waste anyone's time right now. That's the worst you could do. So yeah, have something valuable to share or questions to ask, dig in, and just make it a valuable time. And yeah, those can work to help kind of keep those engagements up.
You were asking about productivity in the team. Last week we did share, so I just added a couple additional data points based on our kind of pre-call. So last week we were sharing just a look at cold calls and connect rates, and we did see it had dropped for several weeks. I think that's what you're seeing show up in the meetings right now, is that, as we saw the drop, the meetings weren't getting booked. We're just starting to see it bounce back up. So last week, the prior week of March 30th, it came back up 14%. We'll share an update this week. So we're starting to see AEs making more, or the team's doing more outbound to clients, which hopefully will start to impact the next few weeks of meetings booked. I think the one other data point here, Greg, is that we had shared on emails that the outbound side from SDRs, although it's been difficult to make the phone calls, we're starting to see a much bigger increase in emails. And this is, people are home, their offices picking up the same office lines that they had. And so these are the two data points that I would say give us, that encourage us that the data should start to pop back up as we look, at this week and the weeks to come. Any advice for revenue leaders out there right now who are going through times that are different for them? They're trying to think about how to hit quarterly numbers, trying to think about how to solve problems. Well,
I mean, just kind of back to those last two data points you showed, and just also thinking creatively, like, for BDRs, I've heard some great stories about, sending out donuts, or do a virtual lunch and learn. So sending them, door dashing them lunch, doing this creative things like that right now. I think people really appreciate it, and it's different. I think everyone's gone through these emotions in the last few weeks. The first weeks it was, oh my gosh, we're not going to survive. We can't work. We can't do this. And then all of a sudden your mind starts changing and thinking, and you come out with some new and creative ways that you can get through things. You just got to adjust and think of new ways to approach it. And so I think things like that can change things up and help you get more engaged during a time that's certainly challenging to do so. So those are things that stood out. But yeah, I think for leaders, communication's key right now. With your team, especially if they're dispersed and you've got them all working remote, you're not there in an office to do your rallies, but find ways to do those rallies. I like to do daily like this. I think what you're doing, daily updates. I think even if it's for 15 minutes, get into a quick Zoom or whatever you do with your team, and just keep that pulse strong, because it's critical right now. And get communication out. Anything that helps keep people upbeat, because you're going to need your team positive, and you're going to need your team active and a good mindset. And doing things like that, to me, would be one thing I'd say. Just a lot of communication, stay with your team, be close to them, keep an eye. You see anything that stands out, make sure you get one-on-one with people, and digging in with them, helping them kind of turn a corner and get back out. And people want to hear from people who have good energy right now. So you got to make sure your team has that. Hey, Greg, your comment about just the daily type approach. Were you a daily huddle as a leader? Did you run daily huddles, or what was your playbook on that front? Yeah, I was I do more weekly live gatherings, but I would have my managers do daily 15-minute huddles. I like the 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes in the afternoon, and just, go around the horn, whatever topic you want to bring up. Just how are people going to approach the day in the morning? Have them kind of each speak out. Then in the morning, kind of how did it go? What were things that stood out? Just to get ideas flying with the team. If I wasn't doing live sessions, I would do a lot of recordings. We use the service, and you could use things like Zoom to do it too, but just get in a meeting, put up a cool background, record yourself for a 2-minute snippet and send it out. Because it's hard to do live ones all the time, but if you can do kind of 2-minute quick updates over video that people can consume. I like to do that on, maybe it wasn't daily, but every other day, just to make sure that you were staying in front, getting good messaging out there, and highlighting the successes or topics that you want to make sure people were keyed in on. I think it's great. I just think on the topic of morale, and we kicked off with gratitude, but just our own folks, the folks on our own teams that we're counting on, they are seeing some softness in their numbers. So that always impacts morale.
we're starting a new quarter. The mountain feels high given the COVID. So how do we keep the spirits up? How do we keep the communication strong? I think those are both, great plays, both the recording as well as just the dual side kickoffs. Any final thoughts, Greg, before we kick off the rest of our Monday today for the collective sales community?
Yeah, it is in a lot of ways challenging times, but I think, it's that opportunity to look for areas you can fine tune the team. And I think the good news there is we're going to come through this, and then you come through it, frankly, stronger. And then you're going to catch that momentum. People are going to be so excited to get through this. And so you want to be there and be ready for that. I think there's going to be a surge. I think people being pinned up. And once this kind of allows us to get back and start doing what we were doing before all this happened, I think there's going to be this amazing energy. And so this is the time, even though it's a little bit challenging, dig in with your team, listen to the conversations, understand their energy, understand little areas that you might be able to help them fine tune in their approach and your overall approach to your customers. And you'll come through this much stronger. You'll catch that wave of energy. I think then we'll see some good upside coming through it.
Look, I love it. I'm gonna launch a quick final poll before we close out. So the question is up for everybody. But in the spirit of looking at AE meetings versus customer success, the question today is, are your customer success teams engaging customers in different ways right now? And so either yes, we are using more education. Yes, we're prioritizing wellness checks. Yes, we're working to get ahead on renewal sooner. Yes, all the above. And no, it's business as usual. So data is coming in. So far, it looks like we are 70% or so on yes, all of the above in terms of more education, more wellness checks, which is what you mentioned on just kind of pinging people. And then also getting ahead of the 83%. So where we basically came in as 83% are doing all three of the above, which is fantastic. That is what it is all about right now. Just everyone doing their best and helping customers get through this. Greg, I appreciate you kicking off with us today. I wish you a great rest of the week, and happy Monday, everybody.
Likewise, Jim. Thanks so much. Thank you, everybody. Have a great week.
All right. Cheers.